So thank you, everybody. Really happy to be here and really happy to be sitting with these visionaries and very talented people. Who of you have, well, who of you have heard of blockchain? Let's start like that. I guess everybody, because you're here. Who have ever done a Bitcoin transfer? Like who have ever, so we've identified the...
Wow, good.
More than usual.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Who
That's why
of
they're smiling.
Who of you feel that you can accurately explain what blockchain is?
Well, there are a few hands. That's a first.
At least some hands. OK, we'll get into that at the end of this. I hope more hands would raise to such a question. I want to actually give everyone, all the panelists a little bit more opportunity to explain themselves and their backgrounds. So I'll start with you, Cliff.
So as Antonio said, my name is Cliff. I've worked in the music industry now for the last 22 years, working for a label, working for a broadcaster, and specializing in rights and technology. I spend a lot of my time now not as a lawyer, but as a strategist and advisor. And two areas that I'm particularly focused on are artificial intelligence and blockchain. And I see those worlds getting closer and closer with every day.
Peter from Resonate, and as Antonia said, we're a cooperative, so all the members are owners, and we are building various aspects of the system on the blockchain, not entirely, because it's going to take a while before the technology evolves to do that. And I am collaborating with a number of different organizations and startups in the space to help build the infrastructure that's needed to move this forward, because it's incredibly complicated, and as Cliff knows, on the legal side, it's a landmine, and so working with a lot of folks in the space to try to get us there.
So, well, I am Blanca, and I work with video and sound mainly. I don't know anything about blockchain, but I know some things about distribution. I also write about new media, so I'm a bit in the middle of everything, but I'm an artist, not a lawyer or a businessman. So
I think it's important to start with the creator's perspective and creator's needs, because in the end, that's where it kind of all starts, and that's what blockchain is being used for, to solve kind of problems and to make things possible for the creators. We were talking earlier today. You mentioned that you release your work through Creative Commons licenses.
yes.
How long ago did you start with that, and how did you come to this decision?
I don't believe in copyright. I also think that it's a bit naive right now to believe in that, because even if you want to release your stuff using copyright, everybody will wanna take your stuff and use it in some way or other. So I don't think it's a viable option, even if you think it is, because it's gonna happen. Whatever you do, it's gonna happen anyway.
And then how, you mentioned that people remix your work.
Yes.
How do they find your work in the first place?
It's online at a lot of places. I have used, I think that everything from Vimeo, YouTube, SoundCloud, Bandcamp, not Spotify, because it's different how it works. Also Archive, which is free, and there are a lot of free music archives where you can release your stuff using Creative Commons or even copyleft. And I have done all those things. And everyone can do with it whatever they want.
And then you mentioned that it's naive, copyright, and thinking that people are not going to remix your work. What about the benefits for you? Like, you could still just copyright it, not bother with Creative Commons. So why do you decide to put in, like, maybe the little extra energy to make it available in those places through this type of license?
I'm not sure if I should use those places, because most of them are companies. And even if they are different, with Bandcamp, you can make money. With SoundCloud, you cannot make money. So it's always tricky. Sometimes I don't really think what I do with my stuff, because I'm not so... I mean, for me, it's not a big problem if people use it. So I don't think very much about it. Maybe I should, I don't know. But
You mentioned you have like this objection or this skepticism you have about these places being companies. Can you explain like why that makes you doubt whether you should use these places?
because they are making money and you are not making money.
Uh,
And that's a bit tricky, I think.
So
No.
I think that gives me a good opportunity to
Yeah.
move over to Peter. Can you tell a little bit about Resonate, your startup, your organism in a way, and particularly the vision behind it, how you got started, and I think that's very interesting to start with.
Yeah, so it started for me kind of back in '99 because I was in LA and doing a lot of web development for artists, and then I got into electronica producing. And so I was hearing all the stories from top down and bottom up because I did a lot of sites for some really major artists and then some that were totally unknown. This was right when Napster hit. And so it was really clear like we had gone down this rabbit hole and we were never going back, and the industry was going to like basically stick their head in the sand and not pull it out for, I don't know, it took 5 or 6 years, I think. And so I got to see things from all different sides, and that just really was percolating for a very long time. And it was in 2014 when I heard about the blockchain platform Ethereum that it started to coalesce around, oh, wait a minute, maybe there's a way that you could actually build systems and platforms that benefit the artists, and that the governance models and the technology is structured in such a way that fairness is baked into the code, that it's like written into the way that data moves, that you can't circumvent that. And so the reason for also going into the cooperative business model, because it's the only thing that kind of works that's similar to decentralized technology, is to make sure that artists don't get screwed in the long run. And I think everybody that's is a creator and has used an internet platform has felt the pain of having a change in terms and service that's usually directed by investors.
So you mentioned that you're a cooperative, and I think people are not so familiar maybe with cooperatives, but also
in Catalan, show of hands about how many people are in a cooperative. So, okay, maybe it's less than I thought, but I've heard that Catalan is famous for its cooperatives, but maybe a lot of folks
What does it mean
elsewhere.
for Resonate?
It's very simple. It's just one member, one share, one vote. So I'm the founder and I have a single share. And so if somebody wants to call a vote to say, you're doing this wrong, they can petition and to the community to say this has to be changed, this is wrong, and then it would become like the law, so to speak, of the operation.
And
I could get voted out of my job under the legal structure of a cooperative. Hopefully somebody will do that someday, because I don't necessarily need to run it forever. But
who are the members?
Musicians, listeners, labels, and the volunteers who are building it as well.
So this means the musicians have shares so that they would participate in the value of the...
Yeah, so an artist uploads tracks or label uploads, and that's what they earn their share. And then for fans, they buy their share through a yearly due of €5. So it's €5 per year. So that's how that works. You don't have to actually do that. You can still use the platform without becoming a legal member and getting the chance to vote.
So let's talk about blockchain. After all, that's the panel title. You mentioned the Ethereum blockchain, but maybe it's important to explain a little bit about what blockchains are, and maybe starting with Bitcoin, like we were.
There's a real simple way that I like to describe it, which is that a blockchain is simply a chain of blocks where data is being written in. So it happens in sequential order over time. And the thing that's different about it versus other databases, if anybody runs a WordPress site, you can always go back in time and make an edit. With a blockchain, you can't. There's this really complicated process through cryptography and needing to have a majority that makes it possible so that you can't actually hack this. The NSA couldn't even hack the writing of the Bitcoin blockchain, and that's why it works as a currency. And so you can exchange value, and it's secure. Where Ethereum comes in, we like to call it blockchain 2.0. It's that same process of blocks being written in sequential order, but you have instead software and smart contracts written in there, and this gives you something that approaches a world computer. Because it's decentralized, where the blocks are stored, it's everywhere, so nobody owns it and has control of it. But it has these extra functionalities. And so we're starting to see lots of startups. If you've ever heard the term ICO, which stands for Initial Coin Offering, a lot of startups are actually self-funding their projects instead of going to VCs by issuing a token, and that token runs on the Ethereum blockchain, and then the token has certain functionality that helps the system run. So this is where things get really super powerful, and this is what the music industry needs because, as I'm sure Cliff is going to explain in a moment, it gets very complicated when it comes to music rights and how music is used for those that are using copyright.
Maybe we can actually let Cliff explain that now.
Well, the music industry...
In 50 words or less.
In 50 words or less. I was giving a talk the other day, and I was saying that the music industry does not have a fantastic history when it comes to new technology. So when you get hugely disruptive technologies like the printing press, it took music publishers a long time to get their head around it. The same happened with broadcasting. Certainly the same happened when Dylan picked up an electric guitar, no? But also, because they're still talking about that to this day. And one of the things that I hear about blockchain is, well, the rights don't work on blockchain, therefore it's not going to be a thing. Now, I was around when the first conversations were had about the internet, and the same conversations happened. Same happened about downloads, the same happened about streaming. And in truth, what will happen is that this technology, I think one of the most important things, and again, I was very heartened to see how many people were already either aware or dealing with some kind of cryptographic currency, is that this is not talking about a future, this is a now. Banks, logistic companies, governments, all sorts of bodies are adhering to cryptography and blockchain-based technology or based in the ether quite significantly. We've seen actually, if you correlate the rise in the value of Bitcoin and ether post-Trump, in the past people would go to gold, when they thought that there was financial instability. People appear to have gone to digital currencies. And again, it all breaks down to this essence of a breakdown in trust. And The Economist, who are not known for their crazy, wild prognostications, they have a fantastic description of blockchain as a truth machine. So we are now at a cusp where you've got an industry which has not been very, how should we say, full of trust when it comes between artists, when it becomes between labels, when it comes to rights holders and collecting societies, and all the different stakeholders that have done their best to hold back technology. Something like blockchain can come along and effectively rewrite the game. And then when you have artists like Imogen Heap controlling all of their rights and having their own platforms, or going onto consensus-based platforms such as Resonate, we have a world where people are effectively having to write their own rules and write their own laws. At the heart of Ethereum, as Pete was saying, is the whole idea about writing smart contracts. And there's been occasions in the recent past where they weren't terribly well written. So really, I think that the big debate is not so much how do rights fit into blockchain. Personally, I find that wholly uninteresting. I think what the more important conversation in a panel called How to Blockchain for Artists and Labels and Fans is understand what are we going to be doing with this technology, particularly when we are on the cusp of yet another significant change. We are going to have, for those of you who came to the panel earlier about artificial intelligence and music, we are going to have billions of versions of tracks being made at a vast speed. blockchain technologies is the only technology I know of that could and would be able to allow people to continue in those worlds. We have pressures upon collecting societies at a legislative level, which says unless you are more open and transparent, all of your members can leave. So we have all of these various aspects of the industry looking towards a technology and an industry that has not been great with trust, getting now to look at this truth machine and say, how do we want to use it? Blanca raised a brilliant point, which is, for the recent past of the internet, it has been terribly successful for corporations, or for Google, or for Facebook, or for YouTube, or SoundCloud than it has necessarily been for artists. So I think that there is an opportunity now for artists and rights holders to, dare I say it, take back control. That's a joke for the English people in the room. Where they could take back control, but they're also going to have to ask themselves, what do they want to do with those rights? I mean this is a genuine question, Blanca. When you say that you don't think copyright is viable, and I personally agree, really what you're saying is I don't see it as a viable income stream, or I don't see it as a viable way to allow me to create. So if you've got artists for whom copyright hasn't worked, we should adopt and embrace this new technology, this new platform of a way to people to say, right, I want to be able to have various aspects of control, I want various aspects of ways of getting paid, and I want a way to know how my work is being used. And on the upside, blockchain could enable that going forward, if we allow it to do so.
So I think it's important to make a distinction. I always explain to people it's okay if you don't exactly understand what blockchain is, because a lot of these discussions, I think at this point, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're a little bit like talking about the internet before the internet browser was invented. So it's quite abstract, but it's important because people are using this technology, people like Peter, to build platforms that allow creators to better, let's say, express their rights and participate. You mentioned all these versions being created through AI potentially in the future.
Yes.
That brings me to a question for you, Blanca. Do you know every remix of your work that exists? Or
No, of course not. You never know that. Sometimes you find things by chance and you think, oh, great, someone has made this thing with my work. But it's impossible to know. Even if you are a really small artist, even if you are not mainstream, everybody can find your work and do whatever they want. And sometimes it's online, sometimes it's not. You cannot know who is doing things with what.
do you use, I assume you use the attribution tag for Creative
Yes.
Commons that people have. So currently it involves just searching your own name a lot, or?
Maybe. Sometimes I even have released things with copyleft, so it's impossible to know. You never know. If you find out, it's by chance, or sometimes someone writes to you, hey, I have made this thing with your work, but I'm okay with everything. If they don't make money for themselves with my work, I'm okay with everything.
And why would you not want people to make money for themselves with your?
Because I don't make money with it,
Okay.
so I don't know.
What if you could make money through other people making money?
I'm not sure. Well, I don't know.
I mean, I think that the important point is that blockchain could enable you to have a choice.
Yeah.
I don't think it should be a case that there are maybe things that you want everyone to play with.
Mm-hmm.
There may be things that you don't want people to play with. There may be things that you want them to be able to play with, provided some revenue comes back to you. And the beauty is that with the technology that is being formed right now, that could be written in at the very beginning, or you could decide to change it in a way that you had set it up to do that. So I think that the questions that Baz are asking you, to which you don't know the answer, quite understandably, are questions where you can say, I decide. And that, I think, is the opportunity for blockchain. I think that the idea and the words cryptocurrency or digital currencies or Ethereum are so distancing, it's sometimes difficult to get around it. For those of you on Twitter, I suggest you follow Beyonce Chain. And what's great about Beyonce Chain is that whenever the word blockchain is used, they replace it with the word Beyonce. And all of a sudden, it becomes really easy to understand. And it's like firms are using Beyonce to track their logistics. And you go, oh, great. So think of it as Beyonce, or think of it as it is, because there is this sense that people need to understand it. I don't need to know how the Facebook app works. I just need to know what it can do for me. So I think that is one of the things that we need to, for the artistic and rights community, is think less about how it works. Brilliant people like Peter and his team can do that. Understanding what the opportunities are, I think, is a much more creative and healthy way to think about it. Or just think about Beyonce. That could work as well.
Peter, for Resonate, are you thinking of making remixing more easy?
Oh, that's absolutely one of the major goals of everyone in this space that's looking at metadata and licensing, is the opportunity to be able to put stems out in a way that attribution and royalties can come back much more efficiently. And so I've been having a lot of conversations actually with Native Instruments about the idea to put a blockchain ID into the DAW, did I say that right? I always get that mixed up. Digital audio workstation. So you're working on your track and you're getting ready to do an export, and you want to export out a full mix and your stems, and to be able to put your blockchain ID in there, so that when it goes out into the ecosystem, the attributions can come back. Whether you want to make money off of it or not, people should know where that came from. Or if it does happen that you create as Richie Houghton was saying here on the panel yesterday, if he tweaks a hi-hat sound in a particular way and somebody wants to use it and it becomes an explosive hit, he should get something back for that. And there's no way to efficiently track that. The current system is just. He said they did a mix CD, 60 minutes. They had something like 500 tracks, and it took them 7 months to clear the licensing. And 2 years time, maybe 3, I don't know. I don't want to predict too closely. All that stuff will be automated, and that's what this will do. So that's a really good way to kind of visualize it.
So if we get closer to the panel title, how to blockchain for artists, labels, and fans, you're taking care of the how-to, because the blockchain will be kind of in the background for let's say, start with artists?
Maybe to even go on a more of a meta level, blockchain is going to power everything in the internet within 5 years. Give you one example. There's a story in the New York Times I just read today about a startup that's doing international payments, Circle something. You can probably find it. So money transfer across currencies, across borders, is extremely expensive. And this new startup is using Ethereum, and so you could transfer dollars to euros to pounds with no currency conversion fees at all, no money transfer fees at all. So this is one example of countless. I mean, it's going into energy, it's going into everything. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
I asked about blockchain moving into the background.
Oh, yeah. So what I meant, yeah. So by giving that example, it's like people that use that service, they're not going to think about this is powered by the blockchain, although they may use that for a marketing purpose. It's going to be about this is free to move money, and they may read eventually that the technology that does that is the thing called blockchain. I think it will become common knowledge of what it is, but just in the same way that everyone knows what HTTP is. Oh, it's like a web link. And you probably know what SMTP is because you've set up an email account. Those are protocols. Blockchain is the new protocol for the web.
So how many people actually know what SMTP is?
I mean, you've seen the letters, right? If you set up an email, you may not know what that's. I don't remember.
You might not even need to see.
I don't
if
even
you
know
make
what
a
the,
Gmail account, you don't see the letters
Yep.
even.
Yeah, that's possible. Right. True.
So you're making use of the Ethereum blockchain for Resonate.
And others.
Oh.
There's lots of different blockchains. There's not.
Okay, that complicates my
Too
question.
specific.
Well, but you make use of
Yes.
Ethereum because of these smart contracts.
Right.
How does that work? Like, how does that interface with your streaming service or your artist?
Well, first of
platform?
all, just to be like totally transparent, it's this part of the service is in development. It's not live. We have a beta app which is based on older regular technologies like PHP and all that, but the blockchain stuff is in development because it's moving very fast, and you have to. Well, there's too many complicated reasons for why, but it's a bit more of a long-term process, and so. But the example of a smart contract and why it's relevant is that she could go in and upload her work and then put in some rules. It says, like, if you're a school and you want to use this to teach kids, it's free. If you are a creative remixer that plans to sell this work or a derivative of this work in the future, then I get 20%. If you're a DJ and you're remixing this track, then I get 50. You could set all these rules in a smart contract, and then it just executes 24/7.
So no,
Yeah.
nobody like Cliff will have to get involved in doing.
He has
the
to get
license.
involved in helping us build it because, that's a very simplistic version. I mean, if you really look at like the maze that is. Performance rights and composer rights and well, you can explain this better than me.
Yeah, I mean, music rights are amongst the most complicated for anyone that's tried clearing any. I was involved in some of the first ever download contracts and the first ever streaming services and global streaming services, and it's a very sophisticated model that needs to sit upon a very sophisticated technology. But let's move on, I think, from the whole. I think it really does come down to people being a lot more creative about what kind of parameters. I mean, the word smart contracts there's nothing more likely to get a dumb lawyer excited than the word contract, particularly a smart one. So just call them rules, or some people call it smart executable code. And the way to think about it is very much as Peter said. For once, you will be able to say, I want it to be able to be used in certain ways at certain times. I want this to be used during the Super Bowl for free, or I want it to, because I'm doing it with a brand, or I want to. There are all sorts of ways that going forward, you're going to be able to say to people, how do I want people to use this thing? And I think that's what artists and rights holders should be thinking of right now, and understanding the technologies of the future. We've got to a point where we sort of understand apps 10 years on, and we sort of understand streaming 15 years on. There are going to be whole new areas of music distribution. So messaging, I predict, will be the #1 distribution platform for most things, including payment, in the next 5 years. And for music, people are going to be sending and whizzing tracks without going through a centralized place. There won't be an iTunes, or there won't be a Deezer, or there won't be a Spotify. People will be able to send it out, and artists and DJs will be able to ping things out to all of the people on their equivalent of a WhatsApp group, etc. And at that point, we're going to need technologies that can keep up with that and understand and set the rules for how you want to be remunerated and how you want people to share. The one thing that we are absolutely going to be doing is sharing more. Some people will say we're sharing too much on certain social media, but we're certainly going to be sharing more content. So thinking about your rights and your attitudes to, do you want to have control? Do you want to have money? Do you want to have attribution? Or do you just want to know who your fans are and get something back from them? These, I think, are the choices that artists and creators are going to be doing. The one thing I can say is that internet, downloads, streaming, electronic music was there first, always. It's like porn is for the video industry. Where the porn industry goes, that's where you go if you run a video business. And with the world of electronic music, because you're talking about people who have grown up in a world of technology, creativity, remixing, being adaptive, and DJ mashups are the #1 thing on SoundCloud. None of them are cleared. So this is one of the reasons why I don't want to go on too much about the rights, because it actually doesn't really matter. What we do know is that there's a vast audience for that, and here comes a new platform that could enable this to happen without all of the headaches that have hit that mashup community and the SoundCloud community going forward. And I think that STEM libraries like Native Instruments and Hello Samples and Spitfire Audio and all these guys, I predict they're going to do very well going forward, particularly if they embrace blockchain-type technologies, because they are going to be able to monetize their goods so well. I mean, they're doing it pretty well now. But if they're able to capture some ongoing value and have it incorporating, I think we're going to see a whole new world of creativity and a whole new world of revenue.
So we just have like 5 minutes left, more or less. To get to the kind of back to the panel topic, how to blockchain for artists, labels, and fans. If there are like artists and labels in this room, and I'm sure there are, or creators, how can they get started? Other than obviously signing up to Resonate, but like how can they get started with understanding this space and participating in it? I would probably start.
There's a great article by Imogen Heap that was published in the Harvard Review a few weeks ago, and that's like really great overview from an artist perspective. And it's really just making sure to follow the hashtags. Follow blockchain in general. There's going to be a lot there. Stuff that might get confusing. Whether you're signing up for Resonate or not, you can follow us, and we're going to be talking about it and announcing it. I'm working on several different partnership opportunities, which are going to be announced in the coming months. So, yeah, I think it's just a question of kind of staying in the loop, stay educated, watch the space. It's going to be very chaotic for the next year or so. Some things are going to work, some things won't. We may end up with a system that's kind of a hodgepodge of 4 or 5 different projects in 2 years, where little bits and pieces of things kind of merge into one solution in the long run. Nobody really knows. It is just moving really, really fast, and it's very hard to predict where the dust is going to settle.
What I would say is that, so I have a number of people who say, but my rights are tied up to a label, or my publishers, it's going to be too hard. I think that one of the things that we need to do is take the conversation beyond the recorded track. Your fans are really interested in digital currencies, so why more bands and artists aren't creating their own coins or creating their own currency, I don't know. It's a fantastic opportunity to be able to engage with their fans and their artists. And also things like digital merchandise. So I act for lots of online influencers and vloggers and stars. Their fans are, they make more money on digital stickers and digital goods and Snapchat filters than they do in relation to their videos. I think creators really do need to think beyond rights that are encumbered by everybody else and using that as an excuse not to do things. To understand that the nature of blockchain and Beyonce is so wide that there's so many other things that your fans might want and you might want from your fans. Start experimenting beyond the recorded music aspect, and you may be very pleasantly surprised.
And watch Kik, the messenger. They've just recently decided to move into Ethereum, and they're going to do some really innovative stuff with digital currency and tokens inside a community. And so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of press coverage on that in the coming months too. And that you can look at it from another angle. And I think that's the kind of important thing to think about, is not just about the slice of music rights, but generally to get an overview of different blockchain applications and how they're used in different contexts, because that's when your mind starts to open up into possibilities. And that's where we are right now. We're in the idea stage where this is going to open up the opportunity to do pretty much whatever we want with knowledge, information, and value transfer.
I want to ask your opinion, because I think you're, in a way, closest to the audience as a creator who didn't know anything about Beyoncé before this panel. I'm sorry to the people who just came in. You missed a really good joke. Yeah, what's your main...
I think that it's important to find new ways of distribution, because right now, most places where you can distribute your work, you cannot really do what you want. You only can do what they want you to do. So Resonate is, I hope, a great solution, maybe. But I think that it's important to start thinking about what creators, creative people want to do, and know what big companies want everyone to do for them.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
with that, I want to thank you all for being here. If you want to learn more about blockchain, you can follow all these people on Twitter, and they're really smart and have very insightful streams. Yeah, and thank you, Free, for being here and sharing your knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you.